Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We have a Women Tell All spoiler. As we know, Women Tell All filmed just about a week and a half ago, and nothing crazy has come out so far, but now we have Game of Roses podcast explaining who is going to be on the hot seat. We're going to get into that right now. Make sure to subscribe, follow me on Patreon, and also don't forget, every afternoon, Bachelor Rush Hour, the podcast. Anywhere you search for podcasts, search Bachelor Rush Hour, and you can listen to all of the day's content. All right, let's get into it. During Women Tell All filming, Greer was asked to address the blackface scandal as part of her hot seat. Here's what Game of Roses podcast had to say.
Do a little race relations work during the Women Tell All, and it's not going to go well.
They're doing race relations work?
It's definitely not going to go well, but...
Because of Greer?
Specifically, yes. She is put, how do you say, on a hot seat and made to answer for her various...
She's being made to answer for Eric Shore.
Basically, yeah. I think so.
Wow.
They're going to try to do a little race relations work.
All right, so let's see what else they have to say here. Now, of course, we know Eric Shore, I believe in high school, Bedminster, New Jersey, wore blackface and has apologized. We're going to get into the lack of addressing it on the Men Tell All versus what apparently they're going to do is address Greer on Women Tell All. Not to say that everything in life is equal. Greer did not wear blackface. She defended on her Twitter, I believe, a friend of hers who did. Well, it'll be very interesting to hear what she has to say. She has issued an apology, I believe, on Instagram.
They just can't keep any consistency. They're just like going back and forth, throwing things against the wall. What will work? Like, okay, we're going full back into whites. Okay, now we're dealing with race. Okay.
But I mean, that really is the problem with how they're handling all of the different racism issues that seemingly are in every season is the inconsistency. It's like Eric Schwer, ignore. Greer Blitzer, they put her on a fucking hot seat and literally make her do like a racial sensitivity seminar almost on television. I don't know how much of that's going to make the edit.
They just can't.
Yeah, let's see if there's any other clips. No, so that's it. So yeah, how much of that's going to make the edit? As we saw just half a year ago, Eric Schwer apologized for his insensitive photo of him in blackface in high school. And you can see some of the responses that received. The Bachelorette said, from two black women with nothing but love and grace, the apology is much appreciated. And we know Greer has apologized for her defense of a similar issue where her friend was dressed up as I don't even know who, but this Eric Shore lack of covering it on the Men Tell All has drawn a lot of criticism. We covered it here. Michelle Young spoke to executive producers after the show ignored Eric's blackface photo. So it could possibly be that Michelle Young was pivotal in getting them to start having these conversations on the actual show. As we know, they didn't air the Eric Schwer blackface, but then they talked about it afterwards. My theory there, as we talk about shows being psychopathic in the sense that they don't feel pain and they're doing whatever they can for their ratings, my thought was they didn't address it on the show because they didn't want to offend the people that think everything's gone woke, and they addressed it on the podcast apps because that skews more liberal. So Michelle spoke to producers right after the show. We're going to get into what she had to say. Here's how it all started. She made this statement on her Instagram story, and then we'll play her added audio.
Hello, you all. I'm just coming on here to give you...
By the way, I love the entrance. Hello, you all. I'm going to start... Hello, you all. Hello, you all.
Update. Becca and I filmed an additional segment to Bachelor Happy Hour this week where it addresses our finale with Gabby and Rachel and how blackface was not addressed. I spoke about how I excused myself from the stage, the conversation that happened directly after with executive producers because of this segment of blackface controversy that was not spoken about.
Okay, so let's just play it. Here it is.
Becca, I think you and I, walking into last night's episode, I think we knew a lot. We knew, just kind of, we had talked to Gabby and Rachel about everything that had gone on, and we knew that it was kind of going to just be a tough episode regardless without, this other race.
And it's important to remember, at this point, Eric was still engaged to Gabby Windy.
Racism controversy on top of it. And I think I know that I'm still processing it, but we're sitting side by side during this live show thinking that that this is going to be something that's talked about, and I come straight from that James season, which was all about racial controversy and the change within the franchise that needs to be made and that is going to be made. And so I think me and Caitlin sitting there in the audience as this show is like progressing, we're moving through Tino's segment. And then as we get to Gabby's segment, I think we were very, very shocked as we kind of started to process and realize that, the show is addressing the text messages between Eric and this ex-girlfriend that came out. But as it was going on, we were not addressing the blackface.
And we also wondered when we watched this, is it something that they've left out of the edit? And no, it turns out they just weren't going to talk about it. And some people, have said, hey, not that it's not a big deal, but people have asked, well, how does this apply to their love life and where they are now? Something that happened in the past. He had already apologized, this and that. I don't have an answer to the questions of what the show wants to be as far as having candidates that aren't problematic or don't have certain issues. Someone had commented in Bachelor Rabbit Hole's Instagram page, I'm happy they're having Greer address this, but where was the energy from Mullet Boy Eric? And someone else said they are never good at these conversations, so maybe they should just put more effort into the casting process. Now, I do think it would be a lot easier to just cast people that don't have problematic past, but at the same time, as we know, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. And I think there's always enough bandwidth on these live shows to have the conversation, even if it's an extra couple minutes. I know it's a lot to dive into, but I think it's worth acknowledging for the audience that the show cares. But as we know, the show doesn't care. So it's all sort of a cosplay, if you ask me, and maybe that's just me sounding cynical, but as I've said before, the show doesn't care. They want to appease as wide a fan base as possible to keep their ratings as successful as possible. That's all they truly care about. Coming out, Eric does release an apology. He has been criticized for the black box or this or that, but so of course he had his apology on Instagram, probably pulled a Rachel Kirkconnell and decided to just apologize, even though the show has consistently told people to take the time to wait to do it on air. But in this case, they didn't even do it on air, so good on him at the very least to apologize in his own way as soon as, or as within days, right, of when the actual blackface photo came out. And of course, we shared this clip, but Michelle Young, I mean, it was fascinating that she was willing to have this conversation, because we know Michelle Young was working for the company as a podcast host that is Bachelor Happy Hour, and she was able to still be critical. And I have to say, for anyone who criticizes their employer, it's not easy to do, and I think she did a really good job. Maybe, just maybe, Michelle's criticism of how the show handled Eric Schwartz's scandal led to a better job handling Greer's conversation on the Women Tell All. As we know from Greer, because she already has apologized for it all. Let's see if we can just find it right here. Bachelor Greer apology. We didn't have it pulled up. So, yeah, she apologized several months ago. The Bachelor's First Impression Rose recipient Greer Blitzer apologizes for defending blackface costume. Time and age do not excuse my actions, but this is not a reflection of who I am today. I think it's a fair convo to have. I think it's one that can lead people to a better place of understanding, to say, no, look, I don't still have the same opinions I had when I was at that age. And while she says time and age do not excuse her actions, I personally believe that time and age and overcoming ignorance and overcoming viewpoints that we had from the world we grew up in, I think it does matter to show that, those same those same viewpoints are no longer held. Let me know what you guys think. We're gonna have more on this story as we find out more information of what was said and how long they talked about it, and we'll have to see if it makes the final edit. My guess is if they're leaking it now that this conversation was talked about, that it's almost definitely gonna be in the final edit. But we'll have to see how that all plays out. More content coming your way after this.